Good afternoon, student. Welcome to all in a study online. Today I am going to explain the first poem of Beehive, The Road Not Taken, written by Robert Frost. Before I explain the poem, I would like to tell you some detail about the poem. So let's start today's video. This well-known poem is about making choices in our life and the choices that shapes us. Robert Frost is an American poet who writes simply but insightfully and about common ordinary experiences. In this poem, The Road Not Taken, the road symbolizes our life. The poet says that the path that we don't choose in our life is the road not taken. He described his feeling about the choice that he had left in the past. The path which we have chosen decides our future, our destination. The important message that the poet wants to give us is that the choice that we make has an impact on our future, and if we make a wrong choice, we regret it but cannot go back on it. So, we must be wise while making choices. Now, let me explain the text stanzas wise. Two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveller, long I stood, and took down one as far as I could, to where it bent down in the undergrowth. So, first of all, let me explain the meaning of difficult word. So, what does the word diverged mean? Diverged means separated and took a different direction. And the word yellow wood means a forest with decomposing leaves. And the word undergrowth means dense growth of plants and bushes, means the forest. Now let me explain the first stanza. So student, in this stanza, poet once the poet was walking down a road. Suppose that the poet was walking down a road and then there was a diversion. There were two different paths and he had to choose one out of them. The poet says that as he was one person, he could not travel on both roads. He had to choose one out of these two roads. Poet says that as he was one person, he could not travel on both roads. He had to choose one out of these two roads. Yellow wood means a forest with leaves which are wearing out and they have turned yellow in color. The season of autumn. It represents a world which is full of people where people have been living in many years. They represent people who are older than the poet. The poet Now the poet kept standing there and looking at the paths very carefully as far as he can see. Before taking the path, he wanted to know how it was. Was it suitable for him or no? He was able to see the path till from where it curved, after which it was covered with trees and was hidden. It happens in our life also when we have choices, we have alternatives, but we have to choose only one out of them, right? We take time to think about the pros and cons, whether it is suitable for us or not, and only then we take a decision or what path we should choose. Now stanza second. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn then really about the same. Now the word fair means as good as the other one. Claim means better option, and grassy means unused. Wanted wear means had not been used. So, student, in this stanza, the poet says the poet kept on looking at one path for a long time to check if it is the right path for him or not, and then he decided and started walking on another path because he felt that the uh, the both paths were equally good. He says just as fair, so he felt that both paths were equally good and started walking on one of them. He adds that maybe he felt that the path was better for him, second path was better for him, so he chooses it as it has grass on it, which means that it was unused. Not many people had walked on this path earlier, that is why this path was grassy. And wanted wear means that it was not walked over by many people, and um, it was not walked by many peoples. And after he walked on the path for some distance, he realized that both the paths had been worn out the same way. Both the paths were similar and worn out. Even in our life, we take we take any path or option, but all of them have the same benefits, disadvantages, problems, challenges, and we must face them. We think that we are choosing a better option, but it's not that way. So you can see how the poet has made a comparison between the options in our life, and between he has drawn a comparison between the life of journey of life a journey of a person's life and the real journey or the roads. Now the third stanza. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Now, what's the meaning of the word trodden? Trodden means walked over. The poet says in this stanza that the both paths were similar that morning. Both had leaves on them, and no one had stepped on them as they were still morning. Both had leaves on them, and no one had stepped on them as they were still green in color. He decided that that day he would take one path and keep the other path for another day. Although he knew that one way will leads on to the another way, he knew that he could not go back on the choice that he had made. Similarly, even in our life, once we choose any option, we must keep on moving ahead with that option, and we never get a chance to come back and take the other option that we had left earlier. Now, stanzas 4. In stanzas 4, the poet says, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now the word sigh means deep breath, and hence means here in future. So the poet says in this stanza that in the future he will take a deep breath and say that once upon a time he had reached such a point in his life that there were two options for him, and he traveled on that road which has had been traveled upon by lesser number of people. That decision of him decided his future. Similarly, in future, when you grow up, then you will see that once upon a time, when you were young, you had two options. The choice that you made you what you become of it. This is very strong message of all the student that you should be wise and be careful while making choices out of the options that you have in your life, because your future depends on the choice that you make today. Thank you. Now, student, let me talk about the literary devices that are used in this poem. So, first of all, let me talk about the rhyme scheme of the poem. So, rhyme scheme of the poem is A B A A B, and the other figure of speech and literary devices that are used in the poem. The first one is symbolism. Now, what is symbolism? Symbolism is a literary device in which you can see that how two roads have been representing two options in our life. So when you compare two different objects, this is called symbols. When you are using any abstract things when you are using any concrete ideas for abstract things, then it is called symbolism. Now what is concrete, that is that you can see, and abstract, that you cannot see. You know that options you cannot see, but road you can see. So that is why the poet has used road in place of choices. Now the other figure of speech is anaphora. What is anaphora? Anaphora is a repeated lines at the beginning of lines. You can see in line 2, 3, 4, and is repeated here. So when any word or phrases are repeated in the beginning of the lines, it is called anaphora. Now next literary device is alliteration. What is alliteration? Wanted where. You can see that the sound W is repeated two times here. Next illustration is first for. Now here F sound is repeated. Though that, you can see the sound is repeated here. Now repetition is also, ages is repeated. Two roads diverge in a wood. This sentence is repeated in stanzas 1 and 4. Now, let me tell you the brief summary of the poem. The poet says that once he was walking down the road and reached such a point from where the roads diverged in two ways. He could walk over one of the paths only. He took time to choose the right path. He inspected them to decide which was a better option, and then choose the one which seemed less walked over. He kept the other one for some other day, although he knew that he would never get the chance to walk over it. He would go further on the chosen path and not get a chance to go back on it. As he walked on the chosen path, he could not ever come back. Then he realized that both the paths were similar. He felt that his future depended on the futures that he met. So, student, in this way you have seen that what message this poem gives us. And if you have liked this video, kindly subscribe, shares, and give your likes to this video. Thank you.